Thank you, Ricardo, for that great setup. I'm Guy Tasaka. I'm the technology columnist for Editor and Publisher. And when I was asked to write a column about technology, I really wanted to focus on what Ricardo had mentioned about sustainability of journalism. So the technology tools that I write about is really backing a business model. And the title of the presentation is Local Media 3.0, which is really journalism 3.0. So with that being said, I know a lot of you came from around the globe to find new business models. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we learned in the past, and how the future is going to present itself. So I am going to, Ricardo mentioned that I've been in the business for 35 years, actually a little bit longer, but I was being kind on that. There are some very interesting projects that I worked on throughout my career that I just want to touch on as kind of a setup for what Local Media 3.0 is. And I actually started my career in 1988, but some of the interesting projects I worked on is NewYorkTimes.com, when it was just a skunkworks project, when all we were trying to figure out is how to pull the New York Times off of AOL. If anybody recalls, NYT on AOL was really the first time we were publishing to the internet. Second thing I worked on was the e-edition. You all have digital editions at your publication. In 2002, the New York Times launched the very first e-edition. It was actually the first digital subscription product at the New York Times. Fast forward to 2009, I worked on the transformation of PDF files to an EPUB, which was a 1 megabyte file that was delivered over really slow telecommunications. We had to do that. We had our greatest win was to get a newspaper compressed down to 1 megabyte so that it could be distributed. That was fascinating. It was challenging, but everything that I'm talking about was a precursor to the next thing. And it's history building on history, what worked in the past versus what's coming in the future, and that was the alignment. In 2011, I worked on the very first paywall at the local level at the Memphis Commercial Appeal, which was also compounded with the first paid mobile apps. And I say it happened at the local level. I think Scripps at the time was probably a top 50, top 100 newspaper. The New York Times had launched the all-access model several months before, which really validated what we were doing. But it was hard, it was expensive, and we hadn't really invented anything new. What we were able to do is make the technology work at the local level, find affordable alternatives, and prove the business model. So that was really, that was in 2011. In 2014, when I was at Calkins, is everybody familiar with the concept of FAST? FAST stands for Free Ad-Supported Streaming Television. So basically, it's taking television and streaming it with ads in it. And everything that I mentioned, I put the dates on here because, sorry, thank you. I put the dates on here because everything we did was actually, this is 5 years before the masses adopted it. It was very early. There was no roadmap. All we had to go on was what had happened in the past, what worked in the past, what didn't work in the past, and then we looked at what the future held, what the future consumer behavior was going to be, and what the future distribution was going to be. And we just triangulated it. It was not magic, but it became a very predictable way, predictable path. So I want to talk about, and I apologize for the slides being very text heavy. I'm going to distribute it so you don't have to take notes. But I want to talk about the evolution of local media. And we think about local media in this continuum of it used to be good, then it was bad, what's next? So can I see a show of hands of how many of you were in the industry prior to 2005? So About a fifth of the room. So everybody else, how many of you came in after 2020? And also, what were you thinking when you came in? So 2005, I'll talk about the different about the details of the different segments. But in 2005, we had tremendous growth of both revenue and audience, because we had these moats, these infrastructure moats. We could deliver a newspaper. We could deliver hundreds of thousands of newspapers. We could create them and deliver them to porches and to stores in a 6-hour window. To say that out loud in 2023, it sounds crazy, but that's what we did every day. And because we had that infrastructure moat, we were able to have virtually monopolies in the industry. And we had this unfragmented audience of homes, and as well as businesses. So 1.0, very, very successful. 2.0, between 2005 and 2020, it was a free fall. Audience fell, advertising fell. It was things that were out of our control. It was the internet came along, and the internet fragmented the audience, and there were multiple places to get news and information. And because we no longer had a monopoly on everything, we lost our lead. We became just another player, and not a good one from the looks of the numbers. And lastly, we followed a bad business model. We didn't understand who we were. We were looking at the digital platforms. We were looking at the big national media players, and we were saying, we as local media publishers need to follow this scale game. We needed page views at any cost. And we started doing really dumb things that were going away from what we did well. So what happens in 3.0? Think about the continuum. It was good, it was bad, but the pandemic changed everything in good ways and bad ways. I say that there's no moats and there's no swim lanes. Before, we had this great infrastructure that was protecting us. TV and radio had FCC licenses. There are no swim lanes now. There are more people watching TV via streaming than terrestrially. There are more people listening to audio streaming than terrestrially. In other words, there's no advantage to being a TV station. Any newspaper can cross into the TV station swim lane. They can cross into the audio or radio station swim lanes. So that's opportunity. No moats, but no swim lanes. Previous speaker spoke of generative AI. It's going to solve a lot of problems. I know we fear it taking jobs, but what it really does is it reduces expenses, but it also closes talent gaps. I know to share, when I was at Calkins Media, we tried to get our television reporters to write long form. That doesn't happen. I'm sorry. How many broadcast journalists are in the room? Okay, you don't count here. So it's very difficult to get broadcast journalists to write long form, and I see a lot of people nodding. With generative AI, all we need to do is get the structured data, the who, what, when, where, why, and we can take that information, which is 100% factually correct, and send it to any platform. We could write a radio script, we could write a video script, but that's really the benefit of generative AI in terms of we can be everywhere at any time. And also the pandemic changed a lot of what was good enough. There was broadcast, and broadcast with shiny lights and beautiful studios. But what the pandemic did was Jimmy Fallon and American Idol, and they were all broadcasting from home with good enough technology. And the public realized that you didn't have to have shiny studios and bright lights. You just needed to be authentic, and you needed to be timely. And the pandemic also changed a lot of rules with regard to local businesses. Local businesses took a big hit, but that's when I think a lot of communities really realized, well, for me for one, didn't travel for 2 years, so I had to figure out what was in my community. I think we all got very close to our communities during the pandemic. So this is the continuum of 1.0 to 3.0. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Hopefully you can see those slides. So this is the US newspaper market in 1.0 with the data to support it. If you look at this, from 1990 to 2000, the industry grew 50%. It went from $40 billion to $60 billion in a 10-year period. That's a big number. In between 2010 and 05, it kind of bumped around. If you recall, that was the dot-com era. So we had starts and stops, and then 2005 came. But if to read this graph, the red line, the flat red line is circulation or audience revenue. The blue line is advertising revenue, and the yellow line is total revenue. So to understand, what did we do right in 1.0? Why were we successful, and what did we learn from that? Well, one, we super served small loyal audiences. In many markets, mid to small markets, household penetration was 80 to 90%. The newspaper's product got into 80 to 90% of homes. Think about that. That's an insane number. But it was because we had the large moats. We had the infrastructure and the production and the information infrastructure in place. We were a trusted source. So you look at, I put these things, and this is an example of a newspaper, and this is from 2005, and it's the table of contents and all the things that we presented in 2005. And going into a little bit more detail, we presented international, national, and regional news. All that was syndicated, or virtually all of that was syndicated. We offered local news, which was original content, and then we offered comics, TV grids, stock, weather, box scores, movie, horoscopes, all syndicated, not originally created. Classified, marketplace, and obituaries. That was user-generated content. We didn't do it. People paid us to submit it, to be in this giant audience that we had aggregated for them. So there was this tremendous value exchange between the newspaper and the audience, that being trust. They trusted us that we were able to curate all this information and deliver it to their doorstep. And then there was a tremendous value exchange between the local businesses. Because we were able to amass these giant audiences, the local businesses knew that they could get their message out to everyone. And it was a very simple way to advertise. You just sent your ad to the newspaper, you were listed in the yellow pages, and that's all you really needed to do. So tremendous value exchange really ties into why we were successful in 1.0. Here's 2.0. The picture in the background is the Great Depression. I hope that doesn't offend anybody. But did you know the Great Depression only lasted 13 years? We're now in the 18th year of our depression. So everything, it's really an interesting analog. But the industry went from 60 billion down to 20 billion, or actually 20 billion in a 15-year window. Again, total yellow, blue advertising, red circulation. Anybody notice something interesting about the red? It's the same all the way for 15 years. The revenue is fluctuating between 9 and 11 million. So I guess that's my way of thinking about this. We can't expect this hockey stick growth in audience. It hasn't happened in 15 years. And what's happened in that period, you think about in 1990, a newspaper costs 25 cents. Today it costs $2, $3. It says $3. That's 12 times more than it was in 1990. That means our circulation fell 12 times, but the revenue is flat. It's an interesting way to look at it. I didn't realize that until I put this slide together, but it's something to really question. Audience revenue is not going to hockey stick. So why is 2.0 not successful? And I say is because many publishers still are living in 2.0. So there was some of it was just business or just things moving forward. The internet was invented. And when the internet was invented, there was fragmentation. And it wasn't just websites. It was new ways to get content through the internet. It was mobile, it was social, it was chat, it was streaming. All that fragmented the audience. They no longer need a newspaper. They need the information from a newspaper, but they don't need the physical newspaper. Second thing that happened, and I mentioned, the strategy of let's chase scale. Everybody wanted to chase scale. Everybody wanted to tell their advertisers. They had millions of page views. So there was this strategy. There still is a strategy, page views at all costs. And it's SEO, it's pushing to social, it's going to third-party aggregators just to get clicks back to your site. And I'm sure those of you who are working in newsrooms and look at the data, what you're seeing is 99% bounce rates, and you're seeing your time spent plummet because you're getting very disloyal audiences coming to your site. Those aren't people who are going to convert to paid subscribers, and they're really not people who are of value to the advertisers. But that was the strategy that was driving digital growth, or the KPI that drove digital in 2.0. Something that was really, really frightening, and I look at it as both a challenge and really an opportunity, that as I started researching this, most media companies engage with 0.5% to 1% of all the businesses in their market. That's a crazy number, 0.5% to 1%. That's opportunity, because if we were engaging with 50% and we still had that previous graph, I would say there's a problem. If we're engaging with 1%, I say that's opportunity. Let's get to 10%, let's get to 20%. And really 3.0 strategy is about engaging with more local advertisers. I talk about the emergence of digital platforms. We all know about Google and Facebook. I went back and I got that first one is Instagram, for those of you who remember that. Pinterest, Google, Reddit. Those are all digital platforms. Those aren't digital media companies. And I want to make a clear distinction. I'll show the characteristics of digital media company, of digital platforms versus media companies. And we can talk about the difference, because that's really the foundation of what 3.0 is going to be. And I know we talk about Google, we talk about Facebook as being the enemies or the boogeyman or the responsible for what happened in 2.0. And nobody ever talks about WordPress. And for those of you who remember what it was like to launch, the fifth of the room who was here in 1.0, to raise a website was very expensive. It was probably a $100,000 minimum effort. You needed designers, you needed programmers, you needed servers. WordPress launched in 2003, and when WordPress launched, and I don't want to just blame WordPress, but when WordPress-like products, Drupal, some of the other CMSs, supply went to infinity. Everybody could be a publisher. And the value of a media company's page views was being questioned against the click, was being measured against the click farm. The more we depended on programmatic advertising, the more WordPress and other websites became the enemy. Do you know there's 2 billion websites in the world right now? Only 20% of those are active. That's still 400 million websites that you're competing against for clicks, for audience, for information. So trust is growing. The need for trust, the need for trusted sources is growing because of this infinite digital supply. So whether or not you believe that this is the path forward, this is why we were successful in 1, this is why we were unsuccessful in 2, we all are in agreement that we need something else. This is just not working. So I'm going to jump forward to, I have my slide. So I want to talk about digital platforms, and this is what we're really using as the basis for building 3.0. So 4 characteristics of a digital platform versus a 2.0 media company. The first thing is first-party data. And this is the first mention of me talking about first-party data. To participate in a digital platform, you need to register. The digital platform knows absolutely every person on it, And essentially, they know everything about that person with regard to their behavior. Now, you think about every platform. One of the best ones is Gmail. And Gmail is just, it knows everything about you. It knows everything that possibly you don't know. But so in a digital platform, all users are known. In a 2.0 media company, you have this giant audience and you know a small percentage of them. Addressability, meaning the ability to know somebody, know what audience segment they fall into, and be able to serve a message to them, whether it's a message or an ad. We'll talk about addressability as being one of the key components of first-party data strategies. 2.0 companies, they know some of their users. They're able to address them. They're not easily able to address them. They have to go through programmatic exchanges to be able to retarget to them, but it's not an easy process. Content strategy, and these last two are key. Content strategy. In a digital platform, they have zero cost of content. It's user-generated. I mentioned emails, YouTube, social media. It's all user-generated content. The platform creates no original content. I say system-generated. Remember, Google search is just Google making sense of what they scraped for free on the internet. So system created. At a 2.0 media company, there's a cost of content. It's original content, it's syndicated content, but there is a cost that's greater than zero. Monetization. Because these digital platforms have so much content to monetize, they've created low-friction self-service ad portals. And then they also have agencies that they work with who resell their content. In traditional media, we still have high-friction direct sellers. And then we have rep firms who also have their high-friction direct sellers. So if you compare what a digital platform does versus a media company, you can see they're vastly different. So how can a media company tap into the successes of what a digital platform did? So Media 3.0, three things to think about. We need to get back to super serving small local communities. I say communities and not audiences because we need to address both the users in the market and we need to address the businesses in the market. And if we can do that, we can be sustainable for 25, 50 years if we do it correctly. Two things. Data is the new oil. And I use oil as a metaphor because oil unrefined means nothing. In the 2010s, we went out, we gathered a lot of data about our people, but we didn't know what to do with them. So it was unrefined data. We need to move forward and refine the data. And trust is the new gold. Remember, 2 billion websites that you need to stand out from. You need to help your audiences understand what is real and what is not real. And we talk about fake news in social media. You know, it's an echo chamber. Fake news posted becomes real news, and everybody accepts it as real news. So we need to be the trusted source that goes out, aggregates information, curates, and tells your audiences, this is safe. We've vetted it. We're preparing it for you. So, first thing, audience strategy. And I'm going to preface all of this by saying, this is going to look like it's a big strategic change. It's just doing what you currently do, but better, and getting more value from what you're currently doing. So it's not a heavy lift, but it's a mindset and it's a culture change. So first-party data strategy is paramount. Understand your audience, both known, unknown, your email lists, and have them addressable. Be able to create audience segments of who your users are and be able to target them via advertising, via messaging. Incredibly valuable. Your content strategy. 50 years ago, there's this great statement. 50 years ago, content was scarce and time was abundant. And today, with 2 billion websites, content is abundant and time is scarce. So curation is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than original creation. Keep that in mind, and I know a lot of you are creating your content strategies. about, I want to say about 5 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, people stopped putting things on their website because, other than original content, because their thought was ESPN is one click away, the Weather Channel is one click away. Well, you're making your audience work. You want to be the aggregator of trusted information, and you want them to look at you as they've gone out and they've made sure that it was safe and they made my life easier. The same way that we did in 1.0, the same way we were able to aggregate 80 to 90% of the market and make it of value to local advertisers. I want to talk about trust, be the trusted source of local data. Now, local data meaning voting records, real estate profiles, school profiles. There's probably 100 pieces of data that sit out in your community that is crucial to your audience, your readers. But you make them work. They're in government sites, they're in third-party sites, but you should pull them together, because one of the values of understanding that local data is being able to build audience segments. If somebody's looking at voter records or voter initiatives, you know where they sit. You know that they're a fence sitter. You know that whether they're Republican, Democrat, whatever party, now you can target them. Most valuable audience in television are the purple. You know, I don't know what it is around the world, but it's the fence sitters, the people who can be swayed one way or the other. Through your local information, you can actually put people in different segments and make them addressable to your advertisers. And talk about omni-channel publishing. Remember, there are no swim lanes. You need to be on all platforms, and you need to reach your people where they choose to get their content, how they choose to get their content. Local businesses. Engage with as many local businesses as you can. There are 10, we think that Google and Facebook has everybody wrapped up. So you think about the local media company. They deal with 1% of the local businesses. Google and Facebook combined work with 10 million businesses around the world. There are 400 million businesses around the world. So Google and Facebook engage with 2.5% of the businesses. So if we round up, there's 95% of local businesses who aren't doing anything other than putting a website up. That's opportunity. And we need to be able to bring value to them. Again, low friction sales process, self-service ad portals. Don't make them work. Don't send direct sellers out. People like to buy ads in their pajamas in the middle of the night. I mean, that's what self-service portals, when you book an airline ticket, when you buy stock, when you buy anything, Amazon, you're not doing it on their time, you're doing it on your time. So why should advertising be any different? Omni-channel selling, take their whole budget. One thing, I've done a lot of work with local business owners recently. Business owners don't want to buy newspaper, they don't want to buy social, they don't want to buy search. All they care about is getting the cost of getting a new customer. That's all they care about. Newspaper, social, search, that's all a byproduct. They have to cross that bridge. But ultimately, all they want to do is get that new customer. So omni-channel selling, meet them where they are, and sell them more than media. They need a lot of help. Local business owners are subject matter experts. They're hairstylists, they're plumbers. They have to run a business. Marketing is part of them running their business. They don't want to market. They would love it if somebody else helped them market. So sell them more, sell them business intelligence, teach them. But that's the value that you can bring, the value exchange between the media company and the local businesses. And finally, tools and staffing. Overinvest in data tools and staff. At my former company, Calkins Media, we had 9 properties. We had 6 newspapers, and we had 3 television stations. We had 5 data people, researchers, analysts, analytics people. When our company was sold, the company that I went to had over 300 newspapers. And I tried to bring my team over, and they said, why do They said, we have 300 newspapers. We have one analytics person. Why do we need a second? So it's really about having the right people in place. And the last point I want to make is that this is everything that I talked about. You can put into place in 6 to 8 weeks. The technology's there. It's the culture that you're going to have to get over. People believe that they work for a newspaper, and there's certain models that were established in 2.0 that show them the graph. It didn't work. You have to be able to let go and say, there's something else. There's something next. Here's a starting point. I don't know that it's perfect, but it's a starting point. It's different from 2.0, but yet it takes what we did great in 1.0, what we didn't do great in 2.0, and we've built a new business model around it. So very quickly, the technology stack that's required to do all of this, 4 things. A CDP, customer data platform. And what that does is it simply, how many of you have a CDP in place right now? A CDP is, it's affordable. It was originally created for e-commerce. And what it does, what it does is it brings in all the audience information. You know, every person that's come to your website. In this 3.0 model, your website is going to be your greatest asset. I know I've spoken to a lot of small publishers, and they would have been happy if they didn't have a website, because there's no return on investment for them. In 3.0, your website becomes your greatest asset. So CDP brings, it tracks all the users that come into your website. As soon as a user registers, subscribes, signs up for an email newsletter, they become known. Their entire history from the first time they came to you becomes known. And from there, you can start to build audience segments. There's privacy concerns about it, but nobody knows that it's a particular user. You all use Netflix. Netflix has about 80 million subscribers, and you see your information, things that you might be interested in. All of you fit into one of 2,000 audience segments. 80 million users, 2,000 audience segments. That's what you're doing. You're using the information from your website to put your users into audiences and making them addressable for local businesses. Omnichannel order management. Remember I said you want to handle their entire spend. Omnichannel order management allows you to take an advertiser and sell them streaming audio, streaming video, search, social, and be able to manage and build everything out of one platform. No swivel chairs, no spreadsheets. It's a single platform to handle all your advertisers' needs. Self-service advertising platform, self-explanatory. And the last thing is generative AI expertise. I'm not saying platform, really about expertise. I wrote an article in this month's Editor and Publisher where we talk about how any publisher with any idea to build a product can use these tools to build a product really inexpensively. You don't have to wait until an AI technology vendor comes to you. You can actually build your own customized program. So understand a generative AI expertise. And then take action. This is truly a business transformation effort. It's not like anything you've done before, yet it uses everything you're doing now. It's not telling you throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's saying use what you do, extract more value, and give more value. This is all work in progress. Nobody, to my knowledge, is doing everything, but there's a lot of companies that are doing bits and pieces of it. And remember my first slide? Everything I've worked on was 5 years ahead of when it actually became a thing, so keep that in mind. This works at media companies of any size, not just the New York Times. It'll work at small and mid-sized publishers. It's really just a commitment. Is this a direction I want to go in? And the last point is, technology, all the technology is available and accessible, meaning almost any media company can buy some version of it to get started. So the last thing I want to leave you with, and I saw you all taking pictures. I mean, these are the two things. It's about data and trust, and how can you use it to your advantage. So thank you. I'm going to leave this up. If you scan the QR code, there's actually a link to the article. There's a link to the article that I wrote in last month's Editor and Publisher. Also, there's opportunity to message me directly. Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me, I just love your comment. Any feedback is positive. It helps me iterate the model. I've been working on this model for 10 years, and the reason I'm talking about it now is the technology is accessible for everybody. So thank you. And do we have time to take questions, or just send the questions in?
Yeah, we can ask a question afterwards.
Sure, absolutely.
We start with Claudio.
Okay, thank you.
Muchas gracias, Guy. Gracias por tu presentación. Lamento que no podamos hacer preguntas, los podemos hacer en el café, pero tenemos unos problemitas técnicos. Quiero preguntar si Claudio Cabrera estaría listo. Aún no. Entonces, Guy, excuse me. Come here. So we have time for some questions. Okay, that would be great.
I can hear if you want to give the questions in English. If
Yeah,
not,
of course. En español, en Spanish, no problem at all.
Any questions? Oh, Claudio's ready.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Guy, this is part of the trio evolution and revolution that Daniel was talking before, and now it got to you.